Hello and welcome to the Complete Podcast Network. I'm Anthony Wilson, recording from Los Angeles, California. Mitch and Galvez are missing in action. I suppose they took the holiday as a day off, although I did not authorize it. But in any case, it's a solo for me. Um, the Knicks on Monday night, they advanced to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. Uh, they completed their sweep of the Cavaliers in Game 4 in Cleveland. The final score was Knicks 130, Cavs 93. So, after that first game where the Cavaliers blew that 22-point lead in the last 8 minutes, from that point on, from that Knicks run to end that game, and then of course they won the game in overtime. Um, Through the next three games, this was not a competitive series. And the Knicks, like I said, they're going back to the finals for the first time in 27 years. Um, this Knicks team is really good, man. I think this is the best Knicks team since 1973, which is the last time the Knicks won an NBA championship. Of course, the Knicks only won two championships in 70 and 73. And they made the finals in 94, lost in 7 to Houston. Made the finals again in 99. And but I would say that so the '90s Knicks, who Knicks fans adore probably just as much as the Knicks of the '70s, who actually won the two championships with Reed and Busher and Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe and all those guys, Bill Bradley. Uh, the Knicks probably revere the '90s teams just as much, just because they played so hard and they represented New York City. So when you think of New York City being, like Jay Z said, or Alicia, Jay Z and Alicia Keys, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, right? Or if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. But yeah, um, they it was such a hard, scrabble team, and they really just put on for New York City, and so Knicks fans love those guys, and you see always the playoffs the last 2 or 3 years, uh, Ewing and Starks and all the guys and Spreewell and I'm not sure. I guess you probably have seen Spreewell to the end. Even some of the guys like Marbury. I know Marbury's an actual New Yorker, but he didn't win anything with the Knicks at all. But yeah, it's just New York. Like I said, New York is a great basketball city, and those Knicks guys. They have so much pride. But yeah, I think that this Knicks team is better than the Knicks, any of those Riley or Van Gundy Knicks teams. Um, this Knicks team has been a machine throughout these Eastern Conference, throughout the Eastern playoffs. They now won 11 straight games. They were down 2-1 to the Hawks, and they haven't lost since. Of course, Big Mitch, as he likes to point out, the Knicks have not lost since Danhausen uncursed them. So, yeah, they're just playing extremely well. All the pieces fit. Mike Brown seems to have figured out how to best optimize, the personnel that he has with that, and create an offense that's just a well-oiled machine. Of course, it starts with Jalen Brunson. OG Anunoby has actually been their second leading scorer in the playoffs. Then it's Cat Towns, who's taken on more of a playmaker type role from the center position. Josh Hart continues to do Josh Hart things. And Mikal Bridges, after I think it was in the first round, or it was a certain point, I think it was in the Hawks series, where it was like, what is Mikal Bridges doing? But he's shooting 63% from the field in the playoffs, which is crazy. So yeah, then they have decent bench with Mitchell Robinson and Miles McBride and Alvarado and Jordan Clarkson sometimes and do some things. Landry Shamet. So this the Knicks of the '90s. I always remember when Bill Simmons wrote this. He said that basically Pat Riley realized when he got to New York that the Knicks were not as good as the Bulls, right? If you think about it, the Bulls had classical players, classical athletes. Talking Jordan and Pippen, two of the most skilled and two of the greatest athletes to ever play the game. Horace Grant, a real traditional power forward. And you have your John Paxson, a traditional spot up shooter. B.J. Armstrong, who's a shooter and can do a little bit off the dribble too if you need him to. Whereas the Knicks, Patrick, by the time Riley got there, Patrick Ewing is one of the all-time unicorns, basically. He was expected to be like the next Bill Russell coming out of Georgetown. His best year was 1990. Riley gets there in 91. He coaches them from 92 to 95. And the Patrick he had wasn't really, by the time, Riley got there, Patrick's knees had kind of started to give a little bit. He was still a great player. And he carried those Knicks teams. They didn't have a second star. John Starks was their second best player. He was a good player. And they had a bunch of guys who were hard-headed guys, who made the league kind of just being, they didn't have that many blue chippers really outside of Ewing. You're talking Starks, you're talking Charles Oakley, you're talking Anthony Mason, and then you got your Gabriel McDaniels, Charles Smith, you had Doc Rivers on some of the teams. Mark Jackson was on the '92 team. You had Doc Rivers, you had Derek Harper. Which was an older Derek Harper, right? It wasn't like the Derek Harper of the '80s with the Mavericks. So, they didn't really have the athletes and the skilled players to play with the Bulls, so that's why they made it such they basically copied what the Pistons perfected. If they just didn't really have quite the amount of talent the Pistons had, and they got to Game 7, '94 against Olajuwon and the Rockets, and they just weren't quite able to get over the hump. Now you look at this Knicks team with Brunson and all those guys that I just named, Towns. This is the Knicks would have to make it, which way would the '96 would have to make it like an absolute slugfest to be able to keep up. But they didn't not nearly have the type of the offense to keep up with this. And of course, that was like the dead ball era. With the Knicks in particular, were not they won by slowing the game down and beating you up. Even more so under Van Gundy as far as slowing the game down. This Knicks team is such a modern offense. Jalen Brunson is 4 wins from immortality. He's if the Knicks win the championship, you think of what that one Super Bowl did for Joe Namath. You think of what those 2 Super Bowls did for Eli Manning. You win championships in New York City, and it's just worth more than winning them anywhere else. New York is the epicenter of the world, really. And if Jalen Brunson, it really goes for the whole, this entire team. You think about that Knicks team, Frazier and Willis and Monroe, they were great. But I think some of those other guys, a couple other guys on the Knicks team, I think they made the Hall of Fame. Mainly, I think like Bill Bradley, he mainly made the Hall of Fame because they played for the Knicks, the 2 Knicks championship teams. But if Jalen Brunson can complete this run as the best player, it goes for Cat too. It goes for all OG. It goes for McCall and Josh Hart and all those guys. But Brunson in particular, being the best player on the team, if he can complete this run, you add on the fact that he's a small guard. You're talking about somebody who's going to be pretty much you're not going to be able to. Jalen Brunson's going to be pretty much automatically catapulted in like the top 25 greatest players of all time. Yeah, and like I don't know, I'm not sure if that's hyperbole to say that. You know, he's gonna be catapulted, and he's a great player. You know, but you know, I mean, it's one championship that you know. I mean, and of course, I'm talking prematurely, but it would be a championship that if he won it in you know any other place other than the Lakers, pretty much, it'd just be like another championship, and you'd rate him, you know, uh, properly. But yeah, one championship with the Knicks, and Jalen Brunson's getting put. I mean, he's going to be considered a top 25 player to ever play. You know, because objectivity goes out the window when it's the Knicks, or whenever it's New York City. You know, I want to give a shout out to Mike Brown because he's going to his first NBA Finals now. Mike Brown has been, I think his first year as a head coach was 2006. You know, he hasn't coached all the way through, but I'm talking about 21 years. Probably, you know, about 15 years of those he's been a head coach, if not more. You know, so shout out to him. Like I said, he's unlocked this Knicks offense and puts them. When they fired Tom Thibodeau, I was like, why would you do that? But I mean, they're a different team. You know, and you know, I didn't think Mike Brown was really known as a. He started his career known more as a defensive coach, coming from the, you know, he was coming assistant on the Spurs back in the day under Popovich, and he was known more for his defense. But then he went to the, you know, he was assistant with the Warriors when they were doing what they were doing, and you know, he learned that motion offense, and he's got those guys humming, you know, on offense. I mentioned that, you know, the Knicks fans revere the those the Ewing teams as much as they revere the teams that actually won in the 70s. That's interesting about the Knicks is that so I think that the Knicks, so you know, Spurs Thunder is 2-2. Game 5 is Tuesday. I think the Knicks are like a legitimately fantastic team. I don't think that you know, whoever they play in the finals, I don't think it'll be like back when I was a youngster, and you had, you know, I mean, the West, you know, after Jordan retired from the Bulls for the second time in '98. You know, the Lakers and the Spurs, the Western Conference became just head and shoulders above the Eastern Conference. You know, now there was a couple. Yeah, you had you know, Detroit snuck one in there in 2004, Miami in 2006, Boston in 2008. But you know, especially between 1999 and 2003. I don't know if the disparity between East and West had ever been greater. Like, you know, in the 90s, the Bulls were dominant, but I mean, the teams that the West was putting in the finals were far superior than like the, you know, 2000 Pacers, the 2001 Sixers, the 2002 and 3 Nets, you know, so, or even, you know, the 99 Knicks, like I said. So, yeah, this Knicks team is legit, and I think they should be able to play with the Spurs or the Thunder. You know, I think the Spurs. I think the Spurs, because they're still so young, there's a chance that, you know, as good as they are, as much of an alien as Wemby is, that finally, if they make it to the finals, once they get there, they might finally start to stumble and show their age, because they really are learning. This is their first time being in the playoffs with this group. So that would give the Knicks, you know, and especially I don't think matchup wise, the fact that Cat would be able to pull Wemby away from the basket all the way out to the 3-point line. Now, you really can't get away from Wemby, but it makes it better when there's a big man that Wemby has to guard all the way out at the 3 point line. Um, I I think the Thunder. See, the thing about the Thunder is that as good as they are, they're clearly not. We've seen this 2 playoffs in a row. They're not some unbeatable juggernaut. That you can play with. I mean, we see what the Spurs did now. We saw it last year with the Nuggets and with the Pacers. Uh, so it's not just a Wemby alien thing. You know, I mean, they barely got over the hump last year across the finish line last year against Indiana, and I still feel like if Halliburton doesn't tear his Achilles, Indiana maybe, wins that game and hoists the trophy. So yeah, I think the Knicks could give them a run for their money. What's interesting about OKC, I kind of feel like OKC has a conundrum with Jalen Williams, and I'm not the first person who said this. Uh, they're dominant with or without him in general, but sometimes you are like in the playoffs, they kind of have played better without him, and it's not the first time that's happened. you know, um, I think that in this series, right, he came back for he'd been out for since game 2 of the first round or something like that. They swept the Lakers without him. Of course, Lakers were shorthanded as well. But now, in this series, it's Wemby and the Spurs. And you look at it and you go, well, game 1 he plays, and the Spurs were able to go to the hump. I think he played game 2 also, but it was a close game. And it was a close game until in the fourth quarter. Game 3, he doesn't play. It's in San Antonio, and it's the best game that Thunder played in the series, right? Then in game 4, he was just, not only was he out, but AJ Mitchell was out also, and the Spurs had their way. But I just feel like I feel like it's kind of like when the Pistons had Adrian Dantley, right? Now the difference is that the Thunder are a team that, like I said, they're able to get past the finish line against the Pacers last year. They've won the championship with Jalen Williams. The Pistons weren't able to win with Adrian Dantley. They weren't quite able to get there in '88 against the Lakers. Of course, they lose by 3 points in Game 7. They're up 3-2 coming back to LA. Isaiah sprains his ankle in Game 6, and they just weren't quite able to get over the hump, even though they were arguably the better team. And then that offseason, they trade Dantley for Mark Aguirre. Mark Aguirre had been a scorer with Dallas, but when he comes to the Pistons, he's like the sixth man, or I think he was a sixth man, and didn't score as much, but everything just started to click into place. Even though really Dantley was a little bit better player, and I think it's sort of like okay, we're going to take Dantley was their leading scorer on the Pistons. We're going to take Dantley, we're going to flip him for Aguirre. Now Aguirre is going to be our sixth man, or not as much offense as he had provided in Dallas. But what that means is that now a little bit more of Isaiah. Isaiah doesn't have to worry about kind of making sure Dantley is happy and getting as many shots as he wants. A little bit more of Dumars, a little bit more of Vinnie Johnson, and it just worked better. It just made more sense, and that's when they were their most dangerous. Like I said, now they were basically, they were a championship team even with Dantley. They just couldn't quite get over the hump. Bad luck in the last, at the end of the Lakers series in '88. But yeah, and then so with I feel like with the Thunder, it's kind of sort of simple. You take J-Dub out the lineup, he's a fantastic player, but then with no J-Dub, well now it's they get that kind of by committee thing they do with their others, as Shaq calls them, Mitchell and Isaiah Joe and Jared McCain and Caruso. Now they have to step up. They have more of an opportunity to shine, and it seems to work better for the Thunder. Um, so yeah, that would be. I think that would be an interesting series. Either way. Now, as far as the Cavaliers, right? Cavaliers swept out of the playoffs. Um, sure, they're disappointed, but at least Donovan Mitchell finally made the conference finals. They did win 2 playoff series. Uh, survived against the Pistons and stuff. So they showed some toughness in first 2 rounds just to get to the conference finals and belly flop like we're used to seeing from them. I feel like the question will be, what do they do? James Harden will be a free agent. There's been a lot of talk linking LeBron back to Cleveland. I really believe that is not LeBron's preference. I believe that LeBron's preference is probably to finish his career with the Lakers. I think that's why he came to LA. Why would LeBron he left Cleveland in the first place because he wanted to live in LA, right, and be attached to a legacy franchise in his career. The last thing he wants to do, I think, is go back to Cleveland. But I guess if he has to, because basically his hand has been almost forced, because the Lakers, the timeline got moved up and the Lakers traded for Luka, and so, but I really think that that's not his preference. If the Knicks lose in the finals, maybe that'd be someplace. He could write the storyline and go, okay, well, he might go, well, I'll go to New York, and if the Knicks lose the finals, he can go to New York, and then if they win next year, he can say, well, that's how I end my career. I delivered the first championship to New York in 53 years. But are the Knicks? Do the Knicks want LeBron to come? Knicks got a good thing going. LeBron's just a massive piece, and he takes up so much. Is Jalen Brunson going to be okay with that? I know guys don't really care, or supposedly, but at the end of the day, when you're the alpha, when you're the guy there, you're the man there. LeBron James comes, and he's still LeBron James. So, and I think it'll be different from, Luka coming and taking the team from LeBron, as compared to LeBron going to New York and kind of, it's going to be big, big news, a big deal, and kind of take some of the spotlight from Brunson and Cat and the guys who've already been there. It will be interesting. Yeah, but I don't think that's LeBron's preference just to return to Cleveland unless he just doesn't have a choice. Of course, he said in his on his podcast he's going to wait until like July or August. Free agency starts July 1st, so around there. But in August, you wait. I don't know. Lakers might not be willing to wait that long, or anybody else. I wanted to say something also about these the All NBA teams. Shams, I don't know if you could say he reported them or he leaked them. Shams don't give a damn. When he's ready to report something, he just does it. He don't care what the NBA has in mind. But yeah, so the All NBA teams ended up being the first team was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That was expected. Nikola Jokic. That was expected. Wemby. That was expected. And then ended up being Luka Doncic and Cade Cunningham. Now, those last 2 spots, I would say probably just the last one. I probably figured Luka was probably, once they, approved his exemption, that he probably would be there. But then it came down to Cade Cunningham and Jaylen Brown, and I feel like Jaylen Brown got snubbed. I feel like he should have made the first team. I like his overall statistical output this year compared to Cade Cunningham. Jaylen averaged like 28, 7, and 5, carried the Celtics for 85% of the season without Tatum until Tatum got back. Cade Cunningham had a fantastic year, but his numbers didn't really pop off the page quite as much as Jaylen Brown. He was like 24 points, 10 assists, something like that, I think. like Jalen's stat line was a bit more eye popping. Also joining Jalen, the second team was Kawhi, KD, Jalen Brunson, and Donovan Mitchell. And the third team, it was Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray, Jalen Johnson, uh, Jalen Duren, and Chet Holmgren. So that's that. Um, yeah, I suppose I won't waste any more of you guys' time. So before I get out of here, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button next to the Complete Podcast Network and to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at TC Pod Network. You can also send feedback and mailback questions to Complete Lakers Podcast at gmail.com. I am out.